Hello and welcome. You're watching Mirror Now and I'm Samia Kapoor. Now, in times of war, where the political fault lines have divided more than just territories, and in this fast changing landscape of the world, there is a man who has been tirelessly working for human rights, especially for the rights of children. And I'm in an exclusive conversation with Nobel Peace Laureate, Mr. Kailash Satyarthi. Thank you so much, sir, for taking your time and speaking to Mirror Now, sir.
My pleasure, Samia.
Like I was just mentioning, sir, that in times of war, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, or Israel, Palestine, every single day, sir, we see that there are scores of people dying due to mindless violence. Do you think that the world has forgotten to give peace a chance?
The priorities have changed in the world and rapidly changing in the world. For example, the diplomacy, the politics, geopolitics, and the war industry. That means weapons, lethal weapons, nuclear weapons, and so on, have become so powerful and so influential in defining the course of all those things which are happening around us in the world. So the space for dialogue and diplomacy is shrinking, and that is something which is needed. The secondly, a sense of moral accountability and the moral responsibility is also squeezing. So it perpetuates these situations and sometimes results in violence and wars. And these wars are so, I would say, out of control. I mean, nobody is listening to the United Nations. What else could be done when Israel has stopped UN Secretary General in their country to come? So, what is the meaning of the United Nations now? Even the Security Council. People who are sitting in, or the countries who are sitting in the Security Council are the ones who are responsible for many of these situations of conflicts and wars. So, a lot of things are needed in the world. But I would underline here that the worst victims and sufferers are children.
Yes.
Children have never been responsible for wars, but they had to pay, and they have to pay enormous price of what they are not responsible for. Not only many of them lose their lives or maimed, but those who are surviving, the trauma will never go away from their life and their minds and souls. And these scars will remain, and that will perpetuate those situations in the future also. We have to stop it. Even one single child is killed in Gaza or in any part of the world. If one single child is kidnapped by a terrorist group from Israel, they are our children. And if they are treated like that, we cannot call ourselves civilized.
So, given the scenario then, sir, when you are talking about a global compassion movement for the Kailash Satyarthi organization, sir, what do you exactly mean by that? Do you think that people today have become discompassionate and that is the reason why the world is polarized in this manner, that they are going into war, relentless war, where children become a casualty?
Well, world has never been so wealthier, equipped with knowledge and technology. World has never been so fast. And we say that world is so connected and interdependent. But the reality is that the world has never been so broken and divided as it is today. The gap between the problem solvers and the problem sufferers in every single field of life is deepening and broadening. Because the connection between the problem solvers and problem sufferers is lost or deeply evaporating. So in this case, we need to find a new way And I think that compassion is the answer, because compassion is not a weak or softer emotion.
Right.
It is not kindness, mercy, pity, or empathy. Kindness is the force of making the things better, but compassion is the force of transformation, because compassion is the deepest connection with the suffering and problems of others, with the feeling that it is your own problem, and then you take action to alleviate that suffering or solve that problem. So we wanted to create a culture of problem solving, not just complaining about the problems, which we all know. We know about the problems and we know the solutions, but there is a disconnect. So my new movement, Satyarthi Movement for Global Compassion, which has been strongly supported by many of the world leaders, my fellow laureates, academicians, judges, and so on, that we need compassion in all walks of life. Compassion is like oxygen. We need oxygen in every institution, may it be politics, may it be judiciary and law enforcement, may it be corporate world, or may it be civil society, or even the religious institutions. We need that connection and feeling for the suffering of others as our own, and drive to take action. And that is compassion movement. We are working on devising compassion quotient. As we know, IQ and emotional quotient EQ, now compassion quotient CQ. Because compassion is innate. You need not to borrow compassion from outside. All the religions and revolutions, all the social transformation initiatives have been taken by someone or a group of people with the spark of compassion. When they felt the problems or suffering surrounding them, they did not sit quiet. They took some initiative, they took some action, and religions were born, the revolutions were born. So we wanted to enhance that level of compassion by way of measuring the level of compassion and then elevating it.
Very interesting, sir, over there. But like you were mentioning, UN, I have to ask you this question, that many people around the world also question the role of the UN, especially with the UN ally, where Erdogan had also mentioned that it's time that the UN tries to take a strong stand, especially in places like Israel, where there has been these killings going on, where they are saying they want to eliminate terrorism, the elements of terrorism. But the fact being that in the process, it's also like widespread killing that is going on. Do you think the UN is yet to talk tough, that they're not doing enough to ensure that these warring heads can be brought to the talking table, process a dialogue in the meanwhile, and ensure that there is some sort of semblance?
Well, if we look at the very idea of UN, which has resulted in the present structure, was after the Second World War. Now the situation has changed. The situation of several countries have changed. The power equations have changed. So now UN has to reform itself, or the international community has to work hard that UN should be stronger. UN has lost its strength, unfortunately. So sometimes this UN leadership keep on passing sermons and requesting and appealing and all that.
Yes.
Yeah, just appealing the countries. But countries are not listening to them, because countries don't see power in the United Nations. So UN should not be just dependent on the one power clique, and that is the Security Council. So we need reform. UN should be more dynamic, stronger, inclusive, participatory and democratic than it was founded. So now we have to completely reform UN to make it more, I would say, relevant for
Absolutely.
the time. Yeah.
So now talking inward, in the last 10 years, it's been 10 years since you were awarded the prestigious Nobel Peace Prize. In the last 10 years, sir, how have you seen India in the sense as far as child labor is concerned? We can't really boast of the fact that India has managed to eradicate child labor entirely. Also, having said that, the violence that is brewing in India as well. Well, we see some daylight stabbing taking place and people are almost mute spectators. Again, the lack of compassion like you were mentioning. The fact that Manipur is a place that is still seeing violence. In the last 10 years, a lot has happened, sir, but do you think a lot needs to be done?
Absolutely, lot needs have to be done. That is the underlining thing. We cannot simply pat our back saying that we have achieved so far. Of course, in the field of child labor, a lot of progress has been made in terms of amending laws, making them more progressive, more radical. We have achieved these things in India. Also, in the field of child sexual abuse and rape of children, the laws have been strengthened and they are more stricter than before. All these things are there, and some institutional provisions have also been made. But despite all these things, it is the collective responsibility of the society and the government, and of course government has to play the most important role and lead role, state governments and the central government both. So this is needed much more with a sense of urgency, and that sense of urgency does not come until unless you feel that they are your children, whose girls are being raped or killed in Manipur. Whose girls are they? They are just not Manipuri girls. They are not just Northeast Indian girls.
It's one of
they
us.
are Mother India's daughters, Mother India's sons. Why they are suffering? It is a national shame, and all of us have to take the responsibility. We cannot just put the blame on each other. It is not politics actually. We have to rise above conventional political wisdom and political interest to feel that the girls who are lynched and raped and killed in Manipur are our daughters, are our sisters. As a nation.
Absolutely, so I agree with you. We do not have the Tata Sons chairman, Mr. Ratan Tata, amongst us. Of course, he is a celebrated industrialist, but he's also fondly remembered as a philanthropist. I'd ask you to recall if there is any moment that you had with him, any anecdote, any story. How do you see his work and how do you remember him?
Well, I feel that this is a big loss for me. I had an opportunity to sit and talk and have dinners with him in the past and speak on many things. And I always found him as one of the most compassionate business industry leaders in the world. I have never come across very few people. Rahul Bajaj ji passed away a few years ago. He was one of them. We have enjoyed good relationship. So with Ratan Tata ji, I was able to share my views on compassion and compassionate leadership, the necessity of compassionate leadership in corporate and business, which is much more needed. Of course, in politics it is needed, but we need at least some icons, and Tata was one of them. Unfortunately, he is no more. So Mother India has lost one of its finest sons. The world of industry has lost a lodestar of morality and ethics, and we will remember him and inspired by him. Generations to come will be inspired by him with his simplicity and compassion for people, animals, dogs, planet, everyone. And that was the beauty of him. We have lost something very big today.
Well, absolutely, sir. I will have to wrap this conversation over here, but an extreme honor on my part to be able to speak to you. Thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us, sir. The world needs more of Kailash Satyarthi to be able to fight the good fight for the rights of children.
Thank you, Samia ji, and thank you, the audience of Mirror.